your families, your friends, your colleagues, clients, whomever. So let's get started. Welcome everyone to a dose of positivity. We like to think of all of you as positive deviants. The very fact that you signed up for something like this tells us that you're probably pretty positive already and are looking for perhaps a community to connect with or some additional tools to help you, especially during this extraordinary time with COVID-19. I'm Margaret Greenberg. I am the co-author of this book, Profit from the Positive, with Senya Myman. I'm also an executive coach, and I lead a certificate program by the same name. And Mia Chernick is actually a new associate of mine. Mia is out in California, and she was recently furloughed due to COVID-19 from her job in learning and development. And so I thought, well, I could help her out and she could help me out. So Mia, welcome. And can you just say a few words, please?
Absolutely. Thanks, Margaret. Good morning, good afternoon, and nice to be here with all of you. Thank you for joining us. Just to go over a couple housekeeping things, we are going to have various points in the session today where we'll ask for your feedback via the chat box. So many of you may be familiar with that. If not, we'll be able to exit out of the screen that you see. And at the bottom, you'll see a chat box function. So you'll just go ahead and click on that. And please feel free to contribute at any time. I'll be taking a look at those and making sure that we can make this as engaging as possible. And also, just wanted to highlight, we will send out these slides and the recording afterwards, as Margaret mentioned, just so you have access to all of it. And we'll hope to see you back at one of our next sessions as well. Margaret, back over to you.
All right. Thank you, Mia. And because it is such a small group, if we also, if nobody else joins, if the other people that registered, we can also open it up and just have a discussion versus the chat box as well, if it stays this small. Okay, last week we had over 50 people on and we had to use the chat box function. So let's go to the next slide. This COVID-19 that's spreading around the world, well, we like to say that germs and colds and things like COVID-19 aren't the only things that we spread in the workplace. Our emotions, both positive and negative, are just as contagious. So it's really to be mindful at this time in our life, how are we infecting those around us? Are we spreading more fear or are we spreading more cheer? When Senya and I wrote Profit from the Positive, we had a chapter entitled The Contagious Leader. And we talked about this in the book or wrote about it. Never did we imagine that we would be in the middle of a pandemic just a few years later when we named that chapter. Let's go to the next slide. What I'd like to do before we dive into the tool that we're going to share with you today, I'd like you to just get present. And you might be familiar with this term, absent presence, whereby we are physically present, or in this case, virtually present. That's why we have you turn on your video. But sometimes we are mentally absent, meaning we are present here in the moment, but we're thinking about other things. We might even be catching up on email, and we're really not present. And we see it all the time with people on their phones, right? When they're really not present. So let's just take a moment and get grounded. You can close your eyes if you'd like. And I'd like you to begin by just focusing in on your breath. Just breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in and breathing out. And I'd like you to just notice, what are you feeling right now in this very moment? What emotion are you feeling? Now, it might be a positive emotion, such as, excited or enthusiastic or really anything. And that's good news, because we know from positive psychology research that when we are in a positive mood, we're more open to learning. But you also might be in somewhat of a not so positive mood, maybe even a quite negative mood, given everything going on around you. You might feel anxious. You might feel worry. So again, just notice how you're feeling, no judgment. And when you're ready, let's open our eyes and we're going to dive into the tools today. Okay. So let's go to the next slide. Over the last 3 weeks, this is what we've covered so far, and it doesn't matter where in this process you join us. I know Salvador has joined us previously, but we talked about the VUCA environment that we're all in: volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, right? That's definitely the environment we're in now. We also talked about the magic ratio, the positive to negative ratio for human flourishing, which is either 3 to 1, 3 positives for every negative. And even some people claim 5 to 1, 5 positives for every negative. So we covered that. We also covered recognize the Achu effect. Again, that's that contagious, our emotions are contagious. And then last week we talked about how do you tame your Oscar the Grouch if you have one? What are some strategies? And one of them being what we just did there in that moment previously about just breathing and focusing in on our breath. So the focus today is going to be on know your strengths. And typically, you know, a session on know your strengths would be 2 or 3 hours. We're going to give you a little mini strength session today. So let's go to the next slide. And this is one of my favorite quotes that I think sums up what we're all experiencing right now with this pandemic, that adversity doesn't build character. It actually reveals it. And so I think every day we have an opportunity as coaches, as business professionals, as leaders in our families, in our friends, an opportunity to actually help other people at this time in our life. And that's what I mean by, you know, it reveals character, any kind of adversity. And although this may be the first pandemic we've ever experienced, we've all experienced at some time in our life other times where we had to be resilient and really that we overcame a challenge or an adversity. So let's just take a moment, and since there isn't anybody else that joined right now, let's quickly do, and I call it the lit match technique. Tell us quickly, imagine you're holding a lit match and you don't want to burn your fingers. What's an adversity or challenge that you've overcome in your life? Maybe not a pandemic, but something else. And Millie, I'm going to start with you. You mentioned that you recently had surgery, right?
Right.
So that must have been an adversity, a challenge. Yeah.
Well, it really was, because it was going to be severe surgery on my face, and I really freaked out because a lot of what I do is presenting, and I thought my grandkids will be afraid of me. I won't be able to present. And I had to do one of my own strategies, which was face my fears and face the facts, what's really happening, and then just get through it. So I'm now 4 weeks later and I'm still alive, and my face isn't horrendous, lots of scars, but here I am.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Billy, for sharing that. And I do see that we have, about 10 participants now. So I'm going to ask the others to just type in the chat box, if we can open that up again. And just type in the chat box, what are some other challenges that you've experienced in your life? Again, maybe not a pandemic, but other challenges. Me personally, I'll share while we're waiting for these to come in. A big challenge, a big adversity in my life was my mother's death by suicide when I was just a kid. Another one in the last few years was my husband was diagnosed with cancer. So again, it's not the event itself, but it's how we end up learning from it, growing from it, and it really does help us become resilient.
Fantastic. Margaret, we've had some participants share in the chat box, so I'll go ahead and read those for the group. Helping family members through health challenges and keeping positive. We see being on a cruise ship that went bankrupt in the middle of the South Pacific Ocean after I had quit a job to travel around the world. Wow. Us, and Deborah shared us dealing with Carol's MS and the changes that encompass physical and cognitive. Salvador shared when he quit L'Oreal after 22 years of working and became an independent consultant. Jill, diagnosis of rare tumor with no treatment. I used my own brain and made lifestyle changes, even though I already had a healthy routine. They can't find it anymore. Great news.
Wow.
Wow. Michelle was diagnosed with 2 primary cancers in February of 2017. Went through chemo in 2017 and again in 2019 when the cancer reoccurred 1 year after ending chemo. Wow.
Okay, so let's just debrief this for a moment. So notice, none of these were about a pandemic, but we've all faced incredible challenges in our life and continue to face challenges in our life and adversity. And so what can we draw upon when we faced those things in the past? And remembering, what did we draw upon? Maybe it was our community, maybe it was something else. And I have a hunch, if we go to the next slide, we drew upon our strengths. So that's the focus of these next 15 minutes, is to really know and focus in on your strengths. So here's what I'd like to ask. Again, in the chat box, if you would, has anyone ever taken some kind of strengths assessment? And if so, which ones? And I'm not here today to sell you any strengths assessment or anything like that. I really just want to know, have you ever taken one? And I'm going to introduce you to an easy way, no cost way to identify your strengths if you don't already know them. But go ahead and in the chat box. Okay, we have somebody here already. Oh, VIA.
VIA.
That stands for the
VIAs.
values in action. Great. Okay, anybody
MBTI.
else? Other assessments?
We have MBTI, Marty Seligman's.
Okay, so Marty Seligman's, that is the VIA. He and Dr. Christopher Peterson, who I studied under 15 years ago now in the Masters of Applied Positive Psychology. That's their instrument, the VIA. Michelle
We have
said no, never.
Another VIA from Millie.
Okay, so let's go into, let's go to the next slide, Mia, because I'm going to show the VIA to people. Oh, Hogan, Deb did the Hogan. Great, that's another great tool. So here is the VIA, and it's free. And I promise you, if you go onto this website, which is viacharacter.org, you will not be solicited. It is actually a research site where they collect data for research purposes. Your info will not be shared, with name or anything like that. But there's a total of 24 strengths in this particular assessment, and they're strengths of character. And so you see here, the first one is appreciation of beauty and excellence. That's one of mine. It showed up this morning at about 6:30 when I ran outside with my good camera and my bathrobe in freezing weather up here in Maine to take a photo of a pair of eagles out on the ice. Again, I just appreciating that beauty in nature. So a great tool if you haven't taken it. It's free and I highly recommend it. And even for your family members, you can create a family tree of strengths. I've done with my own family. You can use it with your clients, your employees, your friends, family, whomever. So I just wanted to make sure people knew about that tool. Let's go to the next slide, Mia. And this is a book that I recommend. And again, full disclosure, I'm not here to sell anything. This book was written by a couple of my University of Pennsylvania colleagues, but it's called Character Strengths Matter. And for each of those 24 character strengths, there's an exercise. on how to implement it in your life. And there's a couple examples around it as well. And this gentleman, a professor at Case Western, David Cooperrider, who I've had the pleasure of working and presenting with over the years, his quote that I loved from the book is that he's learned from the book by performing it, not just reading it. So there's actually performances that you can do to model these strengths and even amplify them even more. So a great read. I know we're finding lots of time to read now, probably more than ever, especially because I don't have a TV up here. Here's the second assessment that I just wanted to let you know. Again, I have no stock in this company, no nothing, but it's the Strengthsfinder. And full disclosure, I will say I do know the author. He and I studied together, Tom Rath, and a dear colleague of mine. But you can do that tool. It's, if you go directly onto the website, it's about $49, $50 through Gallup, the polling company. Or you can just purchase the book online, ebook or hardcover. And in the back of the book, you'll get an access code where you can actually take the assessment. And this is definitely more work-related strengths. There's a total of 34. And again, I'll give you an example. One of my strengths up here is positivity. And you might be shocked, right? But it really is who I am from the time I was a little girl. And I remember when I told a childhood friend that I was going back to school to earn a master's in applied positive psych. And she said, "Why are you going to do that, Margaret? You're like the poster child for positivity." But I was eager to learn more about the science behind it. Why does being positive and more optimistic, why does that matter? And how can it actually impact our health and well-being in our relationships with others? So Strengthsfinders is another tool. And again, the two books, again, you can either get the code in Strengthsfinders 2.0, or you can get the code in the book Strength-Based Leadership. Again, it's the same assessment, and again, available. It's a book that I love to give to recent college grads or about to graduate to help them. So let's go to the next slide, Mia, thank you. So imagine you haven't taken any assessment. There is actually a really simple way and that you can discover your own strengths without an assessment, especially if you don't have any funding or anything. And this is from page 79 in my book. And it's these three simple questions. What am I really good at? What kind of work really energizes me? And the third one is, when am I at my very best? Those are all questions you can ask yourself to begin to identify what indeed are your strengths. So I'd like you to take a moment right now. You can reflect upon these questions, post this webinar, but take a moment right now, reflect for a moment, and then go ahead, type it in the chat box. What are your strengths? What are those things that you're really, really good at? Because those are the things you're going to want to draw upon when the going gets tough, like it is today.
Deborah shared that resilience is one of her strengths. Connecting with people, empathy.
That's one of mine too.
A love for learning from Salvador. one of mine and yours, Margaret.
Mm-hmm. No wonder Salvador has come to several of these.
Mm-hmm. Mentoring, one of Jill's strengths. Connecting, making music with people, some of Millie's strengths. Michelle's told she has a calming presence. I should spend some time with you. Carol, teaching and cooking.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
So these are the things These are the things that we need to be reminded of, right? Especially when we're facing adversity like we are today. These are the things that we need to tap into even more, or what we call amplify even more when we're faced with an adversity. So let's go to the next slide, Mia. So a couple of takeaways. And again, this was just a little, what I call a mini strength session. A couple of takeaways is identifying and using your strengths. It actually has an impact. It makes you less anxious, more productive, more fulfilled, and successful. In fact, according to Gallup research studies, we are 6 times more engaged when we use our strengths every day. And we're twice as likely to report a high level of well-being when we actually get to use our strengths every day. Now, the other takeaway is what I would love for you to do. Today's Thursday, so starting today, just choose one of your strengths to amplify even more. It can be your cooking strength. It can be your empathy strength. It can be the connector strength that you mentioned. Just pick one and decide to amplify it even more. So I'll give an example. One of my strengths is connecting. And I am going, when I hang up from this webinar, I am going to make a point to connect with one of my nieces who called me this morning, and I couldn't pick up because I was on the phone with a client, but I want to connect with her desperately. And she lives out in Michigan, and I'm going to commit to doing that. So anybody else want to, we can open up the chat box, or just pipe in and share what's one strength that they really will amplify starting today to help them not just survive this COVID-19, but really to thrive in it and to help other people at this time, because other people indeed matter. So anybody want to make a commitment? You do? My husband just said he does.
I'm sure he does.
It's tough being married to a coach. Do we have anything in the chat?
Jill has shared cooking and connecting, so that's what she's committing to. Deborah, baking and supporting friends.
Great.
Let's see, Millie, connect calmly. She invited 2 daughters-in-law to chat together for a couple minutes. They're both swamped. A little bit goes a long way. Listening with more empathy. It's a great point. Spread enthusiasm and positivity. We could all use a little bit more of that.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. That's all we have right now, Margaret.
Okay, thank you, thank you. So hopefully we whet your appetite a little bit around strengths and to use them even more. So here's how you can stay connected with us, stay healthy, stay positive. You can connect with us through the book website, LinkedIn, our emails, Facebook, and of course, Twitter. And if you'd like another dose of positivity, we're going to be doing these. I've committed to doing these till our quarantine is over. And we're mixing up the day of the week and the times just to appeal to, different people. But if you need or want another dose of positivity, or want to tell your clients or employees or friends, family, whomever, just all you need to do is just reserve your spot by going on the same website, the Eventbrite that you went on once before. So we love to see people that come back. And like we said, we'll send the recording and the slides as well. And I'd like to leave you with this slide, which is, again, one of my favorite quotes from Michelle Obama, our former First Lady, that you should never view your challenges as a disadvantage. Instead, it's important for you to understand that your experience that you're facing and overcome adversity is actually one of your biggest advantages. And I do know that we shared a lot of those adversities at the beginning of this webinar, and it may not sound very positive psychology-ish, but positive psychology isn't about being happy all the time. It truly is about recognizing our strengths, being resilient, and how we can, what we call post-traumatic growth, how we can actually grow through traumatic experiences and become even better versions of ourselves. So with that, I'll just, we've got about another minute if anybody wants to stay on or in the chat, and then we're gonna sign off. Anything anybody wants to share?
Yes, Margaret, can you hear me? Can you hear me,
Yes.
Margaret?
Yes.
Okay, this is Gina Greenlee.
Yes, is that Gina?
Yeah, I'm showing.
Hello.
I think. Hi. The reason why you can't see my face is because the computer I'm using doesn't have a camera. I just realized that.
Oh,
But anyway,
no worries.
I am on the
No
call.
worries.
You can see my name in the box, and I just thank you for this. This is very. I really appreciate what you said, that the positive psychology is not about, being happy all the time, but really using your strengths to move through whatever life gives you, because as you've known me for 20 years, I've had my share. And so this is a great positive. I don't think this is a negative note at all. I think this is a really positive note to end on with the former First Lady. So thank you for this.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm so glad you could join us, Gina. I'm sending you love from a little cabin in Maine.
And I'm sending you sunshine from South Florida.
Oh, lovely. I'll think of that as we get this foot of snow this afternoon. Okay.
Thank you, Margaret, very much.
All right.
And we're going to enjoy a day
You're
of about
welcome.
75 degrees in North Carolina.
Love that. Enjoy.
Love it. Thank you, Deb. So nice to see you.
Likewise. Thank
And
you.
I say thanks
Okay.
too.
All right. Yes.
Okay, can you hear me all
Really,
right?
I'm so happy to see you. Yep.
I just say thanks, and the magnolia tree in the backyard is blooming, so that's a good sign too, in the middle of all this. Yeah.
Oh, a sign of spring, a sign of renewal. Lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Millie. Thank you. Okay. All right, everybody, we'll sign off. No matter what you celebrate, happy Passover, happy Easter, happy everything this weekend. And maybe you'll join us again next week. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take
Thank you,
care.
everyone.
Thank you, Mia. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thanks.
Everyone.